Hello and welcome to On the Lime. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Will, and in this week's episode, we'll be talking to Shawn Rubel, the founder and CEO of Easy.com. That's EAZY.com.
And if you haven't heard of Easy.com yet, they're actually located right here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Shawn says that they're on a mission to make the world a more beautiful place by simplifying the creative process for everyone, which sounds amazing. I know that I need my process simplified. But basically, they have these really cool set of websites where you can download graphics, photos, and videos, and brushes, basically anything for a creative project that you'd need. And they get over 5 million hits on their websites per month, which is crazy.
I talk about it a little bit in the interview, and I think I even kind of talked about it in the tease from last week's episode, but it's like really funny because Austin brought this guy up to me and I'd never heard his name and I didn't know this place was in Bowling Green, but then I realized this is the company that I was getting my Photoshop brushes from when I was starting to learn Photoshop, you know, and he jokes in the interview that you just find a good grunge brush and you go to town, you know? So it's kind of funny that like something that I used so early in my career in like Photoshop and design has like come back around full circle and happens to be right here in Bowling Green.
Yes, and in the interview, you'll hear that Shawn actually is also a Canadian citizen, which I know you've got Canadian family members.
Yeah, my mom's Canadian, yeah. And
his wife is from Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I grew up. So,
yeah,
it's a small world after all, I suppose.
Definitely. It's a really good interview with Shawn. He talked a lot about the beginnings of the business and how they're maintaining it, the importance of good organic searches, and also the importance of having a good team to help you out.
Yes, their core values, which you talk about later in the episode, are beautifully written and very inspiring. So I hope you all look forward to hearing about those as well.
So without further ado, here's our talk with Shawn Rubel.
So we kind of kick off our episodes with the 3 I statements. I know that you already sent me yours in advance, and I'm really excited to hear you explain some of them. So, Shawn, what are your 3 I statements?
All right. Well, I am a Canadian transplant.
Okay.
I've been using the word Canadian transplant because I think using the word immigrant is a little overrated for us Canadians. But I'm still a Canadian citizen at the moment.
Okay.
That's cool.
I've been in Bowling Green about 15 years now, and I still have a lot of very Canadian hobbies like playing hockey and skiing.
Okay.
And I also like to play a lot of Settlers of Catan with my son and my friends, and also play a lot of chess with them as well.
Nice.
So, that's awesome.
What part of Canada are you from?
Southern Ontario. So
okay.
Right in kind of near Niagara Falls. So I grew up about 20 minutes outside of Niagara Falls.
All right. My mom is from, she's originally from Newfoundland. She was born in Newfoundland, but she she moved to Nova Scotia when she was little. So she mainly grew up in Nova Scotia. So that's where my grandma lives, and then my aunt lives in BC. So my mom's actually a dual citizen. I went through the whole process with her, and I think
nice.
At one point I could have been a dual citizen, but I don't know if I registered because I think at 18 you have to like make a decision, and no one told me I had to do that. So
yeah. So funny story. I applied, went through the whole process, took the test, and today actually I was supposed to have my oath ceremony. And It got canceled because of this coronavirus thing going on.
Oh,
darn.
Today was the day I was actually supposed to become an American citizen, and it got pushed back. So I'm still kind of waiting for a letter in the mail once this pandemic clears up.
Got you. Well, I'm sorry that got pushed back, but we're happy to have you still. So, you know.
Thanks.
We're glad you're here in the good old US of A. What brought you to Bowling Green, Kentucky?
It's a good question. So I went to school, grew up my entire life in Ontario, born and raised. I happened to know people in Bowling Green through some church camps that I went to when I was younger, and made friends here. They went to Western, and while I was in school back home, I would start driving to Bowling Green on weekends and visit my friends and hang out, mainly because it was, new, it was exciting, it was different. And when I was in university, I would just kind of build my schedule around being able to leave town for the weekend and come down and visit. And I'd sleep on their couches and we'd hang out all weekend. And I just kept accumulating more and more friends. So when it was time for me to graduate school, I started looking around for jobs and just happened to get a job at a little web development company here in town. And they hired me, and I moved down as a graphic designer and kind of started my career here in Bowling Green as a graphic designer. And then 2 years later, I met my wife, we got married, and put down some roots, and I've been here ever since.
That's awesome.
So,
Nice. I'm from not Canada. I'm from Alabama, but I found that I just can't really get away from Bowling Green. I love it here. It's my home. So I'm glad that I grew up right outside Birmingham, but I have family like all over the state.
I grew up in Birmingham, so I married a Birmingham girl.
Sweet home.
Oh, wow.
Small world. So you also said that you love to play Settlers of Catan. I am a board game fanatic. I have a huge collection. I don't know if you can see it. It's right. We're recording this so you can see me too. But
I do see some board games, yes.
Lots of them. What expansions do you have for Catan?
You know what? I'm not that hardcore in terms of expansions. I have played some, what is it, maybe Seafarers? Is that what it's called?
That's the only one I have.
Yeah. So my guy I work with, my business partner, has a Settlers tournament every year here in Bowling Green. And I think he has anywhere from 40 to 50 people enter every year. And it's very difficult. I've never made it past, I think this year was the furthest I ever made it, and it was into the third round. Wow. There's usually like 5 rounds. So there's a big trophy and everything.
It's a cutthroat game, or it can be in my household at least.
It is. There's a lot of negotiation and sometimes manipulation depending on who you're playing with. And it's
a lot of like backwards diplomacy.
But it's so cool because it's it was developed by pacifists. So there's no war, there's no fighting. It's all about trading and building, which is pretty cool.
That's
awesome. Really like it.
I've played a ton of other strategy games, but I've never crossed the bridge into Settlers yet. I'm kind of like seeing it, and I'm like, one day I'll get there, but I'll have to make the jump at some point. It sounds fun.
You'll love it.
You'll love it. Yep.
So you are, we're talking to you mainly today for a lot of different reasons, but you are the founder and CEO of eezy.com, EEZY.com, and you said, and I know Canadian Zed as well there. My grandfather always saying Zed, and I was just like, what is this Zed he's talking about? But so how did that come about? I know that's kind of a broad question because it's such a big company. It's probably been a long journey, but how did you get to there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I just, looking back on it, I think I've always kind of had the entrepreneurial bug. I've always kind of wanted to do my own thing. And early in my career, when I started designing websites, I was just kind of working in Photoshop, designing things. And I realized pretty quickly that was only a very small piece of the puzzle, right? Like I could design things all day, but unless I had good programmers around me to program the website, marketers around me to market the website, the design piece was just a small part of it. So luckily for me, I kind of already had that skill set where I could design things and kind of take things that were in my brain and turn it into a reality, but I couldn't actually make it work.
Right.
So I just happened to have a friend who could do programming and hosting, and I reached out to him and said, hey, I want to build this little website, which was called Brush Easy, which is still around. And it's not like I was passionate about Photoshop brushes. I was really passionate about building a thing and getting people to use it. So
I used to use Brush Easy, actually. Just a quick interjection, back in the day when I was making like some of my first Photoshop experiences, when I was making like band posters for like local shows at Tidballs and stuff. I used some of those brushes. I never knew it was in Bowling Green. Yeah.
You just grab a grunge brush and you're off to the races.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really interested in just building things, and I picked Photoshop brushes because that's all I knew at the time. The thing I knew was that I did not want to be a writer. I didn't want to blog. I'm a horrible writer. I don't like writing. And I thought, well, I could build a blog, but I don't think my ideas are that interesting that I'll be able to attract a lot of people. So let me focus on kind of the marketplace dynamic, where people can submit things, and then I can kind of build the framework around that to distribute it. So I was just really interested and passionate about building things at the time. And I just happened to work with a buddy of mine who he lived in Germany at the time. And I would just kind of go back and forth with him saying, hey, here's the design. Can you program it? Can you build it? Can you host it? And then I'd say, hey, I've got this feature idea. Can you build it? And we just went back and forth like that for years, just kind of building it, growing it. So
it's awesome.
Just the two of you.
Yeah, just the two of us. It was in the early days. I was still working full time. Ended up working at Camping World and kind of worked for 2 years as a designer, and then got a job at Camping World and really kind of learned a lot more about e-commerce and conversions, tracking and affiliate marketing and all that kind of stuff. So I was able to take what I was learning in my day job and applying it kind of to my hobby on nights and weekends. So I had built this website, and I just happened to kind of get lucky. Apparently there was a lot of people looking for Photoshop brushes at the time, and it took off and started growing pretty quickly. But it was also my first website I'd ever built. So I just thought that was kind of a normal thing. So I would work on it every day. And one day my boss at Camping World asked me about it. And when I told him it was getting like 8,000 visitors a day and the site was only like 3 months old, his attention kind of peaked and started asking me more questions. And I started realizing, oh, this is a thing here. Like, this is a real thing that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to realize that you don't just build a website and people just magically come to it.
Right.
So for years after that, I thought, well, I'll just build more websites. So I started working on a bunch of stupid stuff that I really should have never been wasting my time on, thinking, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to build all these websites and have all these businesses. And nothing succeeded. They were all failures. And I just thought that was the way it was. You just build a site and traffic comes to it, and then you just make money.
I feel like you probably had like a good thing too with Brush Easy, because you had people who kind of knew like that thing existed and they were actively seeking out, and you were fulfilling something that was hard to find. You had a niche cut out for you almost with that particular platform, I think.
Yeah, and there was, looking around, doing a quick scan of the internet, I thought, I need Photoshop brushes as a graphic designer, and there's no good place to find them. So why don't I just build a thing?
Yeah.
Right.
So I kind of built it out of my own selfish need and curiosity. So I spent years kind of just tinkering around building other websites that weren't really successful. And meanwhile, the whole time I'm doing that, Brush Easy is continuing to grow. I had launched Vect Easy at that point. It was growing, and I was kind of ignoring it, and it was still growing. And I had seen competition kind of spring up and, fly right past me. And it took me a while to realize that, oh, this is actually a real business. Like, I could turn this into a much bigger thing.
Right.
So I eventually started talking to friends, talking to, other smart people, and eventually just kind of doubled down, went all in on it, and started really working on it, growing it, and hiring much smarter people than myself, and just kind of focusing on it 100% of my time. And that's when it really started to grow and kind of take off.
And you kind of talked about it, but a lot of what you did was just being found organically on Google or where people were searching. So is that kind of a direction you all took as a business, is using the SEO more?
Yes. So SEO is a huge focus for myself and within the company. That it's something that I learned a lot about in the early days at Camping World, and just kind of thought, if I can build this site, my original goal was to just build Brush Easy and rank for the term Photoshop brushes.
Yeah.
Right.
And pretty quickly that happened. And then I thought, okay, what other terms can I rank for to get even more traffic? And it just became this game of thinking, okay, if I can rank for another term, I can get more traffic. And it just kind of trains you in this mindset of rankings. And when you rank, you get found and you get more customers and you earn more money.
Yeah.
So I just kept focusing on it and talking to more people about it. I would go to conferences and learn all about SEO. And I had a lot of friends who were into it, and just really enjoyed it, and that's what we still think about. So today too, we've got several people on the team that are well versed in SEO. We're able to build internal tooling to look at metrics and stats and understand where we're lacking in rankings and where opportunities are. So it's a big focus on our business now.
That's awesome.
That is fascinating to me. And now you have 1 million people visiting your websites each month. So you're doing it right.
Trying. Yeah.
So you've never really broken into having to pay-per-click kind of thing. You don't really have to, right?
Not yet. Pay-per-click is it's a difficult thing. It's tricky, and you got to get good at it, and you got to spend a lot of money before you ever kind of start making money.
Yeah.
And especially in our business too, we're a freemium product, so we have a low price point in the industry. So you have to get really cheap clicks and have really high conversions. So it's just a much harder game to play that we haven't tried playing yet. There's much more, some would say, lower hanging fruit to go after right now. So,
and as a freemium, you use the word freemium. That's where you start off introducing people to your product as a free product in hopes that they get used to using it, and that becomes their staple. And then as they grow, they start using your extra elements and everything as well, correct? And those are where you're getting the paid element sales.
Yes, that's exactly right. So a lot of our content is free, and then we have a lot of our content would be locked behind a paywall that you can't access unless you pay for it. So we like to try and serve everyone. So there's some people that will come to our site that just have no intention of paying, and that's totally fine. We want to be able to serve them content that they can still use and be happy with and still continue to come back the next time they need it. So then we're there for them when they're ready to upgrade. And we have extra features, extra content, no ads, extra features and benefits they get when they pay.
That's
awesome.
Really interesting.
That's really cool because it allows people to grow too, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Go on, Kayla. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're totally fine. It's kind of awkward recording over Skype anyway. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we mentioned, we're working from home now, and that's been a strange thing for us to get used to. But you have employees who work everywhere. So that's kind of the status quo for you. What is it like having a team who works remotely so much?
Yeah, it's a different culture for sure. There's different systems and processes that need to be set up to manage that. There's a lot. Communication is a very strong focus, right? Like making sure everybody's informed. We try our hardest and still fail constantly to inform all the right people, and inform all the people when all the people need to be informed, and not distract the people that don't need to be informed. And it's just a different mentality. It's a different way of working. But yeah, overall, the transition has been a smooth one for us. We have an office here in Bowling Green with about 20 people in it. And then we have 46 people total. So the rest is all remote. Some people in Bowling Green already come in and kind of rotate through, some part-timers that will work a couple days a week in our office, work a couple days from home. So we try to have as flexible of a culture as possible, while still making sure everybody's accountable to getting the work done and communicating and, kind of supporting each other.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you all are, your Bowling Green office is located in the Small Business Accelerator. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
So what was that experience like? Because I've heard of a few businesses who've gone through that program, and I just think it's really neat that our community has that available.
Yeah, it's been great for us. Jeff Hook over there, who runs the center, he's been fantastic. When we first moved in there, and I'll back up and tell you kind of the story why too. So for years, I had worked from home full time, and then our CTO lived in Alabama, and no one knew who we were. So we were starting to have these conversations around scaling and growth, and who can we hire, who can we get to help us. And we would talk to some really fantastic engineers and programmers and designers, and we would try to convince them to come work for us. And they're like, yeah, that you're just two guys that are working from home, right? Like you have a website. There was all these questions, and it made it extra difficult to get people to buy in to our mission, to what we were focused on. So we started having conversations around maybe we just need to put a stake in the ground, right? Let people know we're here and start, open an office and start, letting people know that, hey, we're a Bowling Green based company and we're looking for good people. So we went over and talked to Jeff, and we got a tiny little 300 by 300 square foot office. Ooh. And 300 square foot office, and there was 4 of us in there for like the first 6 months with just like a couple chairs and a couple desks, and that was our start. And then from there, when we wanted to bring more people in, we thought, well, we can't put them in here. We need a bigger office. So we invested and built out a space, maybe 1,500 square feet was our next space. Put in some carpet, painted the walls, built out like workstations, and put a sign on the wall. And that was the first time I was like, oh, we're like a real business now. We got a sign on the wall. So, and then we maybe had 8 to 10 people in that office, and worked out of there for 2 years, and then decided we needed more people in the office and wanted to grow even more. And Jeff helped us move into, I'm guessing maybe a 3,500 square foot space. And then from there, we did a renovation, and I think now we're at 4,500 square feet. Wow. And that's been nice because, there's real offices and conference rooms, and we've got dashboards on the wall now and all that kind of stuff. So it's starting to feel like a real space. But if we keep growing, we're going to have to do something else. So Jeff has been very accommodating. They've, especially through these times with the coronavirus stuff going around, they've been extra helpful, reaching out to us, asking if we need anything and doing extra cleaning and all that stuff. So they've been great, and I'd love to stay there with them as long as we can.
Yeah, and this is, just to clarify, this is all in that same building. You've just been kind of building out from, well, not out from there, but, retooling the space within that same, what is it, WKU Business Accelerator building.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
That's awesome.
It's the old mall.
Yeah, it is. It's funny to think about. Everybody talks about, I've only lived in Bowling Green for like about 12 years, but everybody talks about how that used to be like the main corridor and where everything was until the 65 exit. So, that's fun to think about. And
it's great. There's a lot of space in there. You can go for like mall walks and get your exercise in when you're on a break. The community farmers market, before they had their building, used to set up in there on the weekends in the winter time when they weren't in the parking lot. So I'd been in there a couple times for that, but that's years ago. But yeah, it does look kind of like a mall on the inside, which I never anticipated. Yeah. But that's awesome. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit. Easy is all encompassing. It does Themes Easy, Vid Easy, Brush Easy, obviously, and Vect Easy. With Vid Easy, you have gotten all these new sources for video as well. How did you start that side of things? And is that just a different beast completely than doing the Illustrator side of things? Yeah, so video is a completely different type of content, obviously, that is used by a very different type of user, but it still kind of goes hand in hand with, creative assets and stock. So, it was something, again, we just built it as like, hey, let's try this. We can build it, so let's try it. So we just started putting video on the site, and it started growing.
And everything is housed like locally for you. It's not like where people, there are other companies as well where you submit but this is all your content, correct? And then it's put out there through VidEasy.
A lot of content is ours. We've opened it up as more of a marketplace, so others can start selling stock footage on there as well.
Okay.
We've kind of put the brakes on it a little bit right now. We've spent the past year building a lot of our tech on the back end to kind of prepare to scale for years to come. So we've got a little bit of a branding issue right now. We've got 4 brands that are all Easy related under the quote Easy umbrella, and it provides additional challenges that a single brand would not have. For example, when you want to start spinning up marketing campaigns, which one do? You got to do all 4 of them, or do you do the main one that nobody's heard of, right? Or do you do the most popular one? There's a lot of issues that the way we built the business early on, we're learning and we're understanding. So one initiative for us has been to do a little bit of consolidation. So we're probably going to start moving video over to, this is going to sound crazy, but put video on VectEasy for now, and then make the switch to Easy and go all in on the Easy brand.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's a lot of technical hurdles we'll have to reach. And it's a very scary thing because all our traffic is organic. So
yeah, I mean, that definitely is important, especially when you rely so heavily on SEO to have that groundwork laid out. So I can understand that's something you definitely need to plan out as well as you can. So that's cool. That's a good idea, especially since you have all of those, and like you say, most of the people who are using VectEasy need a brush from time to time, or need, some elements in video from time to time. So it's kind of all in one. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I love the idea of having brand unity as well.
Yeah. Originally, the business was built as building a website for a single type of content. And after about the fourth one, we realized, wow, this is a lot of extra work. We just didn't build it to scale that way very well. So, I've joked that for the past couple of years, the team has been working on cleaning up all the mistakes that I made early on. So hopefully once we get over those hurdles, be off to the races. So
that's a good problem to have.
It is, yeah.
And it sounds like you got a good team to clean it up too. So
the team is fantastic. We spent the majority of 2019 rebuilding VectEasy from the ground up. We planned for it to take 6 months, and they spent 8 months, and they launched it without a hitch. Like, it was just seamless, and
that's great.
It was just a fantastic experience all around. So team is fantastic, and we're just going to continue to grow the team and hire more good people. Once you get a couple of good people on the team, you just want more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things that you shared with us in preparation for this interview was your garden core values. And it seems like that's something that's kind of helped foster your having such a good team. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about those? Because I find it fascinating.
Sure. So a couple years ago, we hired a business consultant to kind of help us just get our ducks in a row and prepare to scale the business. And they put us through a series of exercises, gave us homework, did a lot of things that, quote, real businesses would do, right? And one of the things they talked about was core values, right? Like, who are you as a group of people that, when you want to go hire more good people, that you would look to? And we put together what we call these garden core values, and garden's an acronym that I'll share with you in a minute. But it's one of those things that when we first put it together, I thought it was a little hokey, but I've found us referring back to it over and over again, to a point where I actually really like it now, because I've seen when people come in and, they're maybe not quite as good of a culture fit as we had originally thought. It's because they're maybe lacking on some of these core values. And so G is for genuine. We value integrity, authenticity, and honesty. I'm reading from a little slide here that we share internally. A is for ambitious. Our work is never done, and we strive to be better every day by improving ourselves, our product, and our business. R is for reliable. We are trustworthy and dependable to each other and the services we provide. D is for detailed. We create content and user experiences that are carefully considered from first pixel to finished product. E is for enthusiastic. We're all in. We believe in what we're doing, and passion fuels our constant development. And N is for nimble. We build quality products with flexibility and speed, and we iterate for constant improvement. So a lot of times when we've worked with the team, these are things that we continue to remind them of. For example, enthusiastic. Like, we all want to work with enthusiastic people. Nobody wants to work with someone who's a huge bummer, right? Like,
right.
And stuff. So, each one of these can kind of relate back to previous experiences we've had in the past. For the most part, there's a framework that we've kind of bought in on, and it seems to be working. So
I love that those integrate both your accountability to, of course, your product and your consumer, but also to your team itself. Like,
right.
That's so important.
Yeah. And And things like enthusiasm are infectious. You know, if one person's enthusiastic, then it's going to ignite the whole team to be that way. And that's just going to breed a better environment. No, like you said, no one wants to work in a place where it's a bummer. And I think a mission statement is important, though. You said at first it was a little hokey, but you've latched onto it. Have you noticed, though, that like it's helped the direction, having that mission statement and having that like core values?
It has. It gives you, you know, this guiding light, right? A guiding principle, especially during hiring when you're talking to a lot of strangers, right?
Yeah.
That are selling you on themselves. Sometimes people try to oversell themselves, right? And they're like, I'm the best, right? Like, you need to hire me. And we look at that and we're like, doesn't sound super genuine, right? Like, maybe if you threw a little bit of humbleness in there, like, it might sound a little more genuine. We all make mistakes. Nobody claims to be perfect. And I say a lot of times that the work we're doing is not rocket science, right? Like, we're not blazing new trails. There's other stock agencies out there that are doing similar things than we're doing. We're just kind of taking a different approach to it. But for the most part, the work is still hard, right? And we still make mistakes. And that's okay, right? Like, we want to be able to celebrate mistakes and know that, hey, like, we learned, we're moving forward. So it's just a good framework. And in terms of the mission, right? Like, when we're scaling and we're hiring more people, we want to know that the people we're bringing on, have all these characteristics, because when we look back and look at some of the people that we brought on that didn't quite work out, they were missing in some of these characteristics that appear to be so important as time goes on, and we bring in more and more people into the company.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, and I think just because you kind of filled out the paper and sent it to us ahead of time, I don't want to repeat anything, but we kind of wrap everything up to put a bow on things. And again, I will say it. I always say that, so get used to hearing it. To our listeners, I'm just leaning into it. You know, it's just the way I'm going to say it. But what is like one thing that you take with you every day, or like a defining? You know, it could be a book, it could be anything. Just something that you look to or you believe in that kind of is your guiding light, I guess. I don't know.
In the sheet you had wrote, essential to your success. One that I think about is, I don't look at myself as being super successful, right? Success is a moving target that's very different to every person. When I think about my career and I think about, success or wins I've had, getting out of the corporate life and kind of changing my career trajectory to something that made me more happy is probably my biggest success. Early on, I was designing. I was a graphic designer, but I wasn't very happy in that seat. I just wanted to be a part of more and kind of do my own thing as well. So that seemed, at the time, like an impossible thing. Like, I had this realization that I didn't want to do what I was doing, but I didn't know how to fix it. And exploring things and trying new things, and finding little wins is what I think helped me be successful in terms of getting out of that problem I was in. So since then, I've always kind of considered myself successful because I'm now kind of blazing my own trails and doing what I want to do. But yeah, I mean, just being grateful and happy is a huge part of it. And a lot of people I've met over the years, they kind of reach what they consider success, and then they stop working. And I think that's probably what's helped me be, quote, successful, is that I'm a pretty ambitious guy. So once I hit a point of a milestone where I feel like I've reached a level of success, I'm constantly looking for that next thing. And I think that's what's kind of helped me keep going, because a lot of people reach milestones and then they sit back and expect like their world to change, and it just doesn't happen. Right. Always got to be working towards that next milestone. So I think, if I had to wrap it up in a little bow, put a bow on it in a package, I think it's just always being ambitious and looking for that next thing, and being grateful for what you have, which changes your whole outlook on life. A lot of people are just, bitter, and that, they're bitter and not thankful, and they're not happy where they're at in life. And really the only person that can change that is themselves. So
That's true.
Once you kind of realize that and realize you've got all the power, it unlocks a lot of new, interesting opportunities. And it takes time, right? Like, it's not something that you can change overnight. But if you keep working towards it and keep moving towards it, you can develop your own version of success. Very quick. So
it's like cracking a safe. You got to listen to see what's clicking and figure out exactly what's going to be the key, but you got to keep working at it to find it. So
that's a great analogy.
That's awesome. I really love that. And, you know, it's important for people who maybe aren't in the position where they love what they're doing to remember that it's never too late to figure out what you love doing and keep going for it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're in a situation where you have a job, but you don't like the job, right? Like, because you don't want to quit because that's your income, that's your livelihood, right? Like, you need to keep doing it. So I was in that situation, and the way I got out of that situation was by trying to do more on the side and de-risk myself. By the time I left my quote corporate job and started working for myself, I had already had easy going on the side. Like, I had a couple other businesses, marketing, you know, and lead generation and things like that were providing my income that kind of de-risked myself.
Yeah.
And made that transition to go in full time much easier. So people just kind of expect that things will get handed to them on a silver platter, and it doesn't work that way. You got to develop your own success.
Yeah, we've definitely all understood that because, you know, we all worked at a business where, you know, you had in the TV, you know, you had 3 shows a day and that's what you did. But in that downtime, you could use it to build yourself, whether it's building your Photoshop skills or it's all about outside of your work. You know, you have that thing that you, like you say, is going to pay the bills, and then, you know, working on yourself in the extra time. You got to put in the extra time to craft those skills, I guess, or hone those skills. But
absolutely.
Well, Shawn, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate you giving us this time and sitting down with us today. And
yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out. I really enjoyed it.
And that was our chat with Shawn Rubel. It was the first time that we'd done a Skype interview for the podcast, and I think it turned out pretty darn good, if I say so myself.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's always fun to have like some problems presented to you and just kind of like figure out little workarounds. And I guess that's what this quarantine has been all about, is finding those little workarounds, having a little bit of fun with it. Hope you enjoyed the episode. You had a lot of great stuff to talk about, and I think there was some pretty cool, inspiring stuff there at the end. You know, it's never really too late to start over and figure out what you want to do, and I think it's important to remember that.
And on our next episode, we're going to be chatting with someone who Will and I were both big fans of. That's
definitely
Jim Madison. He's such a cool dude. You could probably explain a little bit better about what Jim does than I could because of your graphic design background, Will.
Yeah, Jim Madison is one half of Print Mafia, and they did so many show posters and venue posters for all kinds of crazy bands like the White Stripes, Tool, Marilyn Manson, Metallica, and I used to draw so much inspiration from their stuff.
Yes, super cool stuff. I was lucky enough to be able to become one of his Patreon patrons recently. I get a nice little package in the mail each month of some art that he's made. Jim is also a Ratfink official artist. I'm sure there's a better term for that.
Yeah, that's a new thing for him, and he's having a lot of fun with it. It's cool to see like all the old artwork that he's tracking down and piecing together these new original prints. So it's kind of fun to talk to him about the history of their career and what he's got going forward.
And with social media, I've been able to, that has really changed my work in a lot of ways. So it's kind of been more interactive, and it's kind of like, it's not that, you know, I know I'm not the best artist in the world. I think people are more drawn that I'm actually doing artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's Jim Madison. He'll be on the next episode of On the Lime. If you don't want to miss it or any of our other episodes, be sure you subscribe. Follow us on social too. You can find us on Facebook at On the Lime Podcast, or on Twitter at On the Lime Pod as well. And it doesn't hurt to leave us a review either. Just saying.
Yes, we really appreciate them, and it helps out, you know. But thanks again for listening, and that was this week's episode of On the Lime.
See y'all later. Bye.